What it do, citizens of P Town? You know what this is. This is none other than my definitive ranking of Hayao Miyazaki movies. And yes, just to clarify, this is only exclusively Hayao Miyazaki, not the entire Studio Ghibli catalog. I decided to go with probably my all-time favorite director first, going through and watching all these movies, as maybe realize that he probably is my favorite director of all time. The man is arguably top. I mean, he already is top two most accomplished filmmakers in animation behind Walt Disney, and in my opinion, he deserves to be up there among the greatest directors of all time. So let's get into the list. This is just my opinion and my opinion only. It's very tough. It really just goes to show how great Miyazaki's filmography is when he has a lot of great movies, and it's hard to rank them. So starting off at number 12, my least favorite Miyazaki movie is Porco Rosso. Now, before the pitchforks get raised, okay, don't raise the pitchforks. Okay, Porco Rosso is not a bad movie. I don't think it's even an okay or average movie. It's a good movie. It's just that Porco Rosso is among the least fresh in my mind as far as Miyazaki movies go. I've seen it only about once, and I did think it was entertaining. It serves as one of the better examples of Miyazaki's passion for aviation, and by all means it's going to be a very common thing throughout his films, but I do think it's one of the more fun examples of his love for aviation. And of course the themes of anti-war, friendship, and loyalty do ring true. It's just that from my memory, my admittedly stale memory, I do recall that the plot did drag a little bit in the second act. And if anything, the only reason why it's at the bottom, once again, is not because of a negative reaction, but just because it does need a rewatch. So, Porco Rosso, number 12, but we'll probably rewatch it later on this year. But as of right now, as of this video, I would have it ranked in this spot. Next up at number 11, we have Miyazaki's directorial debut, or at least narrative feature film directorial debut, Lupin III, the Castle of Cagliostro. So this movie is a promising directorial debut. It's a very compelling blueprint for the rest of Miyazaki's filmography. The animation is fun, it's cartoonish, and it's whimsical. And also, despite containing kind of the least fantastical elements amongst Miyazaki's filmography, I do think that Miyazaki is very creative with animation and the action set pieces. He really does utilize animation for what it's for. Lupin the Third is a fun movie to kind of go back to and see, like I said, the early blueprint for Miyazaki films, as well as the influence or similarities to other adventure films such as Indiana Jones and Goonies is kind of what I get that vibe. And there's good direction in this film, kind of indicating big moments that happens in the beginning. There's a moment where there's this quick little twang of music, like a little musical cue when a tire breaks, and that's kind of called back onto later when big events happen in the movie, and it's kind of and Miyazaki's really good at indicating when big moments happen throughout the movie. And so the reason why it's lower on the list is that nobody really talks about this movie for, I would say, good reason. The story is just kind of decent, and the characters I'm not as invested in. And from what I understand, Miyazaki's take on the Lupin character was different than the original series, but still a good movie. Once again, I don't think Miyazaki's made an even like average movie. Still a good movie, just he's done way, 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 way better before. All right, coming up, we reached the top 10 already. Number 10 is Nazca Valley of the Wind. So I really only have positive things to say about Nausicaa, as well as from here on out, it's kind of like another tier of great movies from Lupin the Third. I think this is just from now on, it's just another tier of really, really good to great. But anyways, Nausicaa Valley of the Wind is a very good movie. It has great visuals. It has great and creative character designs. It's a gorgeous yet scary world that we can apply to our own real world. And of course, the themes of environmentalism, conflict, and nature are very clear. The thing is with Nazca Valley of the Wind is that my inclination to rewatch this film is close to none. And not because that Nazca isn't a good movie, but it's because this same exact template of themes, of structure, of filmmaking and style would be surpassed. Miyazaki would surpass this movie by a far margin, and you probably know which movie that I'm thinking of. And so that's why I kind of don't go to Nazca Valley of the Wind as much. Maybe I will have to give it a rewatch as well. That is why it sits at number 10. While a very good movie, it is on the lower echelon. We move on to my number ninth pick, and that is none other than Howl's Moving Castle. I knew this one was going to be a pretty this is probably the one that's going to get some pitchforks raised because Howl's Moving Castle is such a beloved Ghibli film. It's often considered one of Miyazaki's best, especially for fans of his movies as well as the studio's movies. And I do have nothing but good things to say about Howl's Moving Castle as well. I think it has arguably the best soundtrack of all of the Ghibli movies, and some of my favorite character designs. Calcifer, just name a few, is just so iconic. I have a drawing of Calcifer over at the office where I work at. And I just love his design, and you can say that across all of the characters in this movie, whether or not main, supporting, side characters. It's all great. Okay, I know earlier I said I have nothing but positive things to say about this movie. I do think that the plot does meander a little bit in the second half. I do think that the momentum of kind of the first act does stall a little bit, and I'm admittedly not as invested in the romance between Sophie and Howl as other people. But with that said, Howl's Moving Castle is still a very thrilling movie. It's creative, it's fun, a lot of memorable lines and characters, got some thrilling sequences, some of the best set pieces of Miyazaki's filmography. And I did enjoy the strong anti-war themes presented through a fantastical landscape. But I think in the case of Howl's Moving Castle, even though I enjoy the movie, I think that Miyazaki has done better of this type. This is probably one that I'm going to have to defend in the comments, but either way, still a very good movie. Even if it's among the bottom, House Moon Cosmo, on the bottom four of Miyazaki's filmography, it just shows that he has so many other great movies that I love. It's just a statement to the quality of Miyazaki's filmography. So that's why it's at number 9. So now, coming up at number 8 is The Wind Rises. The Wind Rises is, watching that movie, you kind of watch it with like a heavier heart, at least initially, because this was originally supposed to be Miyazaki's final feature, and he was going to retire after this. And there's some things I have to say to that. But first and foremost, The Wind Rises is Miyazaki's most visible foray into the romance genre, in which he kind of acknowledges a romance and develops it more than any other of his movies, in my opinion. And I like the romance, to be honest. It is moving and it's sweet. And the thing is about The Wind Rises is that it lands as a potentially heartbreaking yet optimistic look on passion and passion for what you do and what you're passionate about. Sometimes you have a passion that may outlive others around you, whether or not, in a literal way, or it takes over your life, or the people in your life come and go. That's a better way to put it. The people in your life may come and go. There are some things that you're passionate about that will outlive those people. And this movie kind of ponders, and I would say even concludes and gives this to the audience, in which sometimes it's okay to let your passion drive you away from your relationships, especially if it's something that can benefit others or will outlive you, or if it really is even just something that you love. And with that said, I do think another conclusion about The Wind Rises is that it serves as a reminder to cherish the relationships you have while you are chasing your dreams. I don't think Miyazaki wants to necessarily say don't pursue what you love. Pursue what you love. Your relationships might take a hit because of that, but you should still, in that way, put yourself first. And of course, this movie is Miyazaki kind of pondering his legacy in a way. And it is a very heavy one to watch, especially knowing that this was supposed to be his last film. And I do think that he approached this well in the next entry on this list. My seventh favorite Miyazaki film is The Boy and the Heron, which also kind of takes upon similar themes I talked about earlier. But with The Boy and the Heron, I feel like there's so much more that I can talk about this movie. It is arguably most Miyazaki's dense film. I would say it probably is the most dense, one that you have to dig a little bit beneath the surface to get something out of. I mean, I've watched this movie twice and I've just extracted so many things from this film, themes of grief, legacy, mortality, regret, nature, and as well as the cycle of life and death and how it plays. And each time I've watched it twice, and I've kind of gained two different things from this movie from each of those watches. The first time I watched The Boy and the Heron, I saw it as a metaphor for moving on within grief and just that kind of that stage of grief and the journey that our main character embarks on is an allegory to the journey that someone may have to take themselves mentally in order to move on from the death of a loved one, when dealing with grief. And then the second time I watched this movie, it was a whole nother lens when you look at it through a meta approach to Miyazaki and applying it to Miyazaki's life. You can just see in this movie how Miyazaki is just pondering his own mortality and his own legacy. Will his work surpass him? How long will his passion and his career outlive him? And it poses that question throughout the movie. And also, it poses an optimistic message in the movie. And I would have to say specifically a message to his son and his family and his children, in which his family, his children, does not have to follow the legacy that Miyazaki set up. Whether or not it is meeting the standards of his filmography, which is just almost near impossible in my opinion, or just maybe in a different career path. It doesn't matter. I think this is a message in the way that Miyazaki knows how to express it, that it doesn't matter what his son will choose for his legacy. He's free to do what he is called to, and he'll still love him for it. And I think when you look at the movie kind of like that, at least as just one of the messages served in the movie, it's yeah, it really does strike a really good chord. And once again, it's a dense watch, one that may be hard to extract sometimes. That, like I said, it took me a second try to do it, but I think if you do get things out of this film, then you're gonna get a lot. Number 6 is Ponyo. Ponyo is one of the most wholesome movies in Ghibli's catalog. It's arguably the best animated film of Miyazaki's filmography, and I think that's why it is this high in this list. I mean, the use of colors is just so vibrant with colors, and the contrast and the quality is just so crisp and clear. And there's so many great character designs of just whether or not it is supporting characters, main characters, or just random fish or creatures in the sea. It is, in my opinion, the most gorgeous Ghibli film to look at, and that does go a long way. And in addition, it's just so wholesome. It is just so sweet and so fun for all ages, fun for the whole family. It's uplifting, it's wholesome, it's entertaining, it's great. That's really all I have to say about Ponyo. This is kind of one of those early Ghibli films for a lot of people, especially my age. It didn't matter if you were, a girl my age who kind of liked this type of stuff, or if you were maybe a boy. Not my age. I mean, like back like 15 years ago or something like that, or even more. I remember on the playground, kids would talk about this movie, and it wouldn't be like the young girls who were just already interested in animated movies, or if you were just that like you know boy who just wanted to like cool stuff. Everybody still loved Ponyo. It didn't matter who you were as a kid. People loved Ponyo. Kids loved Ponyo. Adults love Ponyo. Ponyo is great. So yeah, that is my number 6 spot. Number 5, top 5 right here. Kicking us off in the top 5 is My Neighbor Totoro. Like Ponyo, Totoro is one of the most wholesome movies of all time, and I think it is elevated by the fact that it feels more like an escapist movie, and probably one of not only just the most escapism movie of Miyazaki's filmography, but just ever. I think it's among the most escapist films ever, for lack of better terms. There's really not much to say about My Neighbor Totoro. It's cute, it's fun, and that's what it's all about. I mean, it's innocence and imagination captured with such authenticity. It's not for everybody. If it doesn't hit, it's probably pretty boring. But if it does hit, it's just a bottomless well of magic. All right, so top 4. We've already been in banger territory since The Boy and the Heron. And now, like, top 4, here comes another banger. In my opinion, my 4th favorite Miyazaki movie is actually Kiki's Delivery Service. Sorry, my slide wasn't loading. Kiki's Delivery Service. I think it's the most pure coming of age story. I really enjoyed the fantastical lens kind of approach to this coming of age story. There's a lot of metaphors and allegories for growing up and maturing in order to face the real world. And while this isn't the most unique story, in fact, many coming of age story feature these same similar fantastical stereotypes and cliches. I think that Kiki's Delivery Service comes off as the most pure example of it. I think Miyazaki is just so in touch with the humanistic themes of just growing up, growing older, facing new challenges. And there is definitely like subtle presentation of its themes, such as letting go. So sometimes you have to let go of things in order to move on and to find your other calling, specifically with the cat. For those who know, no. And well, it is simple in there. And with the narrative like Porco Rosso or Howl's Moving Castle, I think are more original than Kiki's Delivery Service. I just enjoyed Miyazaki's presentation of this simpler narrative. I mean, I'm just invested. I'm invested in Kiki's growth and her maturity, and I like the moments that it gives you in the movie to reflect on growth and change and letting things go in order to move on. So this might be an unpopular one, but I genuinely love Kiki's Delivery Service. It's also uh, excellent visually helmed, but it's one of my favorite Miyazaki movies in my opinion. All right, top three right here. These are the big ones because I think we have entered masterpiece category. I think that Miyazaki has three definitive masterpieces, and the first one, number three, my third favorite Miyazaki movie, is Castle in the Sky. While Castle in the Sky is not an action film, I wouldn't say it is Miyazaki's closest foray into the genre. At the very least, Castle in the Sky is an amazing adventure movie, one that surpasses Lupin the Third. It just feels so big in every way. The machines, the planes, the themes of peace, the action set pieces, the explosions, the comedy. It just feels so big, and I think it lands extremely well. My favorite touch about this movie is that, well, we know that Miyazaki's movies tend to feature new worlds that are accessible in a way. Whether or not it was Ponyo, the kingdom that Ponyo is from is still one ocean away, for example, or in Spirited Away, Chihiro just kind of walks through a tunnel and then she's in a whole other world. I love how Miyazaki just takes his passion for aviation, and that's kind of like the metaphysical gateway into this new world that Miyazaki presents in Castle in the Sky. Um, but whether it's the action, the dialogue, or the titular location of the film, planes is kind of like that metaphysical transportation to new heights with Miyazaki's gentle hand. And that's kind of how I approach this movie. It is just so amazing, genuinely a masterpiece in my opinion. Number two and number one, I don't know if I lagged there. My number two and my number one favorite Miyazaki movies are not going to be of any surprise to people. I think we're already past the point of surprises. My number two is Spirited Away. Spirited Away is one of the greatest coming of age stories of all time. Kiki's Delivery Service is up there, but Spirited Away is just, I don't need to explain this to you. It is just a whole another level. Miyazaki illustrates the growth that Chihiro needs to go through by presenting this whole new world with its own rules. And while that specifically is not a new idea, especially when it comes to animation, a world has never looked so lively and fun when helmed by Miyazaki and his approach to Spirited Away. Miyazaki takes his signature approach to presenting a childlike wonder view of the world. But in this movie, Chihiro's innocence becomes challenged, and she has to face obstacles that seem impossible. And when we all become immensely invested in Chihiro's journey, whether or not you're a kid yourself and you're watching this movie and you relate to her, or maybe you were forced to grow up when you were young, or you resisted responsibilities when you're young, or maybe you're just an adult as well, kind of going through similar stuff. You want to root for Chihiro as she works past the forces against her. Even though Chihiro did receive a good amount of help along the way, it is Chihiro's decisions that grants her progress. She still takes every step of the journey herself, and that's what makes her such an amazing character to watch grow. And despite being in fear a lot, Chihiro demonstrates courage in the face of fear. And of course, Miyazaki also gives us moments to ponder upon the beauty, and take the moments to take in the growth, because while life can be scary, we can open up to beautiful things. I mean, specifically with that train sequence in which it's just music and it's just Chihiro and No Face. It gives the audience a chance to ponder upon growth, because it shows in real life we can still take a moment to reflect on ourselves while we still move forward. So I think it's really great. I mean, I don't need to explain that to you. I think many people believe it's great. I mean, Spirited Away sits in a very high place, alongside movies. And at least I'm gonna make a statement here. In my opinion, Spirited Away sits alongside the exalted few masterpieces such as Godfather or Citizen Kane, and I think Spirited Away is an undeniable masterpiece. But with that said, there has to be a number one. And you probably weren't surprised let's just get into it. My number one favorite Miyazaki movie of all time, and probably forever, yes, forever, is Princess Mononoke. One of my all-time favorite movies, a gateway anime for me. It's Princess Mononoke. I think it is by far my favorite Miyazaki movie and one of my favorite animated films of all time. I mean, what can I say about this film that hasn't been said? It's one of the best looking Studio Ghibli movies. Even though I did say Ponyo is the best, Mononoke is still like very high up there. It is just a breathtaking, gripping. It's a gripping and complex conflict with numerous motifs to ponder about. I mean, Ashitaka himself kind of represents how life can only suffer at the hands of conflict and war. And the dear God in this movie represents how life isn't fair and what it gives or what it takes away. Princess Mononoke is a story of conflict where there are no heroes and villains. Each side has their own intentions of growing and supporting their communities and having things to lose within this conflict. And yet at the same time, Miyazaki is very clear in his stance on the movie, in which there shouldn't be any conflict in the first place. He would rather not have conflict to happen. There's no secret about Miyazaki's conclusions. So it's both, you know, a tale of no real sides, and yet Miyazaki's heart is just showing in this movie. I mean, after all, life gives and life takes away. So why take away and we can give while we still have life. I mean, that's just one of the many messages that I find in Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke is rich in entertainment as it is high level filmmaking, one of the best movies ever made. It is my favorite Miyazaki film. And that is my list of my Miyazaki movie ranking. Let me know in the comments your ranking of Miyazaki movies. Which of my list would you switch around? Any unpopular opinions that you disagree with? What do you agree with? Let me know your favorite Miyazaki movies and just rank them. Go ahead if you've seen them all or what you've seen. Thank you all for watching this video. Thank you all for the support. Look out for other videos soon. Yeah, and we'll see. So thank you again. Be sure to subscribe. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch y'all later.